We all know that on the 14th of July, the Commission has published its guidelines on the protection of minors under the DSA. And we found it really important to also discuss it here in the open and analyze it a little bit. So again, I want to thank the Commission. I think it's again Prabhat, correct? Yes. To be here with us and presenting the guidelines. And then, of course, afterwards, we have the round with the MEPs to ask questions, give comments. So first, I give the floor to the Commission for 10 minutes you have now.
Thank you very much, Anna. I mean, I really welcome the opportunity, and I know, I mean, I come and speak here, but I just want to also do justice, you know, to my team that has been working really hard on not only the guidelines, but also all the work that has been going on in the background, you know, and I think, in a way, you know, I just want to say an area where we have actually moved incredibly fast in comparison with international standards as well, where similar guidelines have been developed in other jurisdictions, but over much longer timescales than our own work. So before I take too much of our time, I just wanted to also to do justice to all the colleagues, including some of which are here in the room, but also others are in Luxembourg, and the big teams that have been working really very day and night, also on the digital wallet solution, the better internet for kids, the safer internet centers, and the content of the guidelines as well. I won't present all the recommendations in the guidelines, but I'll give you a high-level overview of some key considerations. First of all, they are a piece of really they're a piece of the puzzle of a comprehensive EU-wide approach to protecting minors online. And this, of course, includes you know, the entire set of DSA provisions, which don't only deal with 28 and the protection of minors article, but as you know, and as you have negotiated here in this committee during the DSA, there are other parts of the DSA that also aim at protection of minors, and so this is one part, but a very important part. And of course, next to it, there's also the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, and their protections that are in there, the age verification blueprint I already mentioned, the strategy, the safer internet centers, the cyberbullying action plan. I won't repeat them all, and as I've just mentioned, many of them as well. We believe the guidelines are really the most ambitious, detailed, and comprehensive instrument anywhere in the world, and they reflect our alignment and growing cooperation also with like-minded partners, notably the Australian e-safety commissioner, the UK's Ofcom, but also, as we have seen, the US Federal Trade Commission that is active on this specific topic. So there are several other countries that are advancing around the world, including Brazil or Canada. On the content itself of these guidelines, they really aim to reflect the ambition of this commission and the Executive Vice President Virkkunen, who has made this top priority when it comes to enforcing the Digital Services Act. And they aim to assist online platforms in ensuring a high level of privacy, safety, and security for children. In particular, they adopt a risk-based approach, and this was already mentioned by several members here in the previous discussion, recognizing that different platforms have different risks, so one size cannot fit all, and thus it may not be proportionate for all platforms to apply all the measures set out in the guidelines. Conversely, there is a rich set of obligations in the guidelines that apply to many at the same time. They are based on children's rights because this is an area where normative rights have already been formulated in international human rights law. And so our approach is fully consistent with that. So platforms ensure that the measures that are put in place do not unduly restrict children's right, for example, to participation or freedom of expression, which was also mentioned here as well. Safety by design is really at the core. This is something you do before you're designing a service and not only as an afterthought. So the privacy and safety security are built in and baked in when the platforms are designed, developed, and updated, and not just as a corrective after the fact. Accessible. The guidelines apply to platforms, to all platforms that are accessible to minors. Apologies. So not just the large ones, but to all platforms, and they provide recommendations on all relevant areas in our view. Age assurance was already widely discussed. It's linked to the EU-wide age verification blueprint, It gives guidance on when age verification is required. It sets out minimum criteria for all age assurance methods, including a number of criteria that intend to guide the market as as private sector solutions advance. Recommender systems have already been mentioned as well. Account settings, default account settings for minors, interface design practices, and notably those kind of design practices that aim to reduce risks of addictions from features such as endless scrolling, streaks, or others such as well as dark patterns or other manipulative, addictive, and harmful design practices. Those are really all summarized in the section around recommender systems as well. Content moderation, reporting tools, user support tools, they have to work in practice and need to be age appropriate. That means that they have to take into account the specific needs of different children. Commercial practices, including specific features like in-app purchases, virtual currencies, and loot boxes when they come to, as well as platforms' internal governance and tools for guardians are also part of the toolkit set out in the Article 28 guidelines. Maybe I can just say one thing just before we just continue on the particulars. I mean, the letter of the law says in Article 28 that platforms have to ensure a high level of privacy, safety, and security for children. What these guidelines basically do is they describe concrete steps that can ensure high levels of privacy, security, and safety for children online. And this is really the reason why they are very elaborate, because of course, depending on the specific circumstances, different tools and different combinations of tools must be ready. The adoption was the beginning. Now it has to be followed up with concrete next steps, including swift action on the ongoing investigations, but also effectively enforcing against other very large online platforms under our supervision, but also to provide close collaboration with national authorities in charge of enforcing these rules at national level. We've just had an extensive discussion with the Board of Digital Services Coordinators only yesterday on the implementation of the guidelines, and there's a really strong and uniform commitment from all national authorities in enforcing these guidelines, also against smaller platforms as well. So I'm also pleased to report that a number of national regulators are envisaging or have taken enforcement actions in this regard also at platforms that are regulated at national level. Now, on the relation of the guidelines with the potential social media restrictions that are legislated at national level, I just want to say that the priority here is to make the online environment safer. DSA, as a law that regulates rules on platforms, so obligations on platforms are regulated exhaustively in the DSA, does not allow national law to impose additional or different obligations on platforms. So the guidelines recommend that the use of age verification, if this is done in a national law, needs to be done without interfering on this maximum harmonization method of the DSA. So, but at the same time, the DSA does not indeed set a minimum age to access services. This is the space where national laws can regulate, as long as they don't have rules that contradict the DSA. Examples here, this may sound very complicated, but examples, just to make it clearer for you, is that national laws already regulate a minimum age for example, for alcohol sales or cigarettes or vapes. A recent example in the Netherlands, very prominent, or access to pornographic content or gambling. This is already regulated at national level. So many member states have rules that below a certain age you're not allowed to access such content or such services. And so if there is a desire at national level for a minimum age, this can be incorporated in the architecture of the DSA. Now, when we go further, and I'm almost coming to the end of my intervention, we have focused now on the guidelines, but the guidelines also recognize that a wider context exists and risks of circumvention as well as the potential risks that their rights might be limited or even limited their ability to develop digital literacy. So excessive restrictions have to be weighed also against the risks of cutting children off from some of the experiences online that might be necessary for a good development in our society. And so the decisions that should be taken in this area have to be based on evidence, in our view. And this is also why we welcome very much all the work that has been done here and will be done to inform a wider evidence-based debate. We have therefore also started work on establishing an expert group on these restrictions, in addition to the expert group on the mental health risks for minors. And in doing so, we will be drawing on the work of this committee as well, but also work that has been done at national level in many countries. I end by saying that the guidelines are not a goal, but a starting point. They will have to be followed up by concrete and effective and visible action. They are the result of a granular, inclusive and comprehensive effort to listen to everyone's voice, including that of children, but also of national authorities, to industry, parents and academics. And we will continue this open dialogue with everyone. We will come forward with additional guidance on age estimation methods, which is on the work right now, as well as methodologies for the risk review. For these issues, work is ongoing as well, because while the guidelines set out high-level principles, further details can be provided on which methods, in our view, satisfy which of the criteria as they are on the market today. And of course, this is an evolving area as well. My final point is that we appreciate that the sector changes very quickly, and so we have committed ourselves in the guidelines to reviewing progress already next year, which is exceptionally fast for the work that we are doing, but we recognize that this is a quickly changing environment as well. So with this I end, Anna, and hand back the floor to you, and we welcome, of course, continued engagement with the Parliament on this crucial issue, and we stand ready to assist the committee for any further work that may be necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for presenting the guidelines. And as I said at the beginning, now we have the time for questions or remarks. So I have already our DSA rapporteur double-heading the own initiative report, minus a line rapporteur, Christel, on my list. So please, Christel.
Thank you very much, Prabhat, for this very good overview of the guidelines. And from my side, there should be no mistake. I really, really warmly welcome the guidelines on Article 28. It is a very, very good job you have done, and they will definitely help protecting kids online as long as the platforms will use them as their way to make sure that they are complying with the DSA. And that is, of course, as you said, the enforcement part of it. However, they also, as you said here, I think, and we can also see it in the report on protecting minors online, is that it also raises a lot of questions. Because at one hand, I think it is important that young people, kids and young people, can be digital and learn to use the tools in a good manner, and that means that they have to have some access to some certain services. But on the other hand, we also need to protect them because a lot of the content is simply not age appropriate, and I think that balance is important to find. And on that, therefore, I have a question on it. We're discussing age verification, but we're also discussing age limits. And do you think that? Would it be a violation of children's rights if we set a limit and age, a minimum age limit in EU law, for instance, saying that certain platforms will not be allowed to use unless you're above a certain age? It could be 13, as many of the platforms themselves, but it could also be 16. Would that be a violation in itself of children's right? Or how can it be done? Or would it be a protection of kids enough that if we know that there are harmful content on platforms and parents say, we don't mind, you have the right to be online even if you're 10 years and using some of the social media that themselves said that 13 years is the limit. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit about that, because I find it very important and difficult also for us to find ways to do it in a correct manner. I heard you said that it will not be possible yet to put an European age limit, but Ursula von der Leyen is also opening up for the discussion, so we will probably give you some guidance in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikola Minchev.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would also like to thank to the representatives of the Commission for the nice presentation and also for the guidelines. So I'm happy to see that the guidelines include many good measures that could significantly enhance the protections of minors' safety online if properly implemented by all relevant actors. This is crucial for the effective protection of our children and for the success of the DSA. But as the guidelines are voluntary and thus lack clear accountability, how does the Commission intend to ensure compliance and consistent protection of minors without market fragmentation, given the absence of a binding uniform approach? And secondly, how can we ensure that smaller platforms are able to implement adequate safety and privacy measures for minors without facing disproportionate burdens? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I have Laura Ballarín.
Thank you so much, Chair, and of course thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for the explanations and for being here to explain the guidelines. Of course, I'm very happy with the publication of these guidelines on protection of minors, and we understand that this is only one part of a more broadened approach that the Commission is tackling with the question of the protection of minors online. It is clear that we have Article 28 in the DSA, and that is the legal basis that we have now to ensure that this protection of minors online, and we hear often the Commission of the idea that we need first to implement the DSA and after that it will come other legislation. So basically we would like to give you all the strength to finalize the open procedures that you have for a long time against some big tech. We know, and you said that you will finalize it soon. We really hope it's soon, because it's been more than 1 year. Taking into account the geopolitical context, we are very worried with the threats that we receive from several parts of the world, and actually now the enforcement of our digital laws is at stake. So the publication of the guidelines is a very good sign, but we need to enforce, close the open procedures. And one final question in the line of my colleague Christel. Do you think that a minimum digital age could be envisaged maybe through maybe not one only age, but maybe through a range, depending on the country? We understand that there are different cultures, but I think that we cannot envisage effective age assurance, age estimation or age verification tools without a minimum digital age. So good work, and you will have this Parliament to support you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now Kim van Sparrentak.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the explanation. I asked some questions in my previous intervention, and I will ask them again to see if we can get a bit more clear answers. Because one of the things I noticed in your guidelines, which I think are really great, and thank you so much for all the work on that. I mean, if you look at the privacy and safety by design approach, that's really great. However, when I look at the risk-based approach on how you should deal with age verification or age assurance, there's a clear discrepancy or a clear difference between different platforms. And when you look at social media platforms, the Commission is going for age assurance or age estimation. So a few questions related to that. What do you think is the most safe age assurance method there is? Do you have any good examples of very safe and privacy-friendly age estimation methods? And why did you choose to have less safe age assurance methods for social media than, for example, for adult content? And would it be feasible to require that verification by the digital wallet is always an option and perhaps the preferred option if this is the direction we're going? And how many member states are ready to use these kind of safe age verification methods? And also whether the Commission is taking into account perhaps an evaluation of digital majority age. Because my biggest worry is that it will create a waterbed effect, that we say, oh, kids are not allowed on this anymore, so now the platforms get even worse. Is that one of the things you're taking into consideration, really making sure we monitor whether it doesn't become an even worse place because we are assuming that kids are not on the platforms anymore? Thank you.
Great. This exhausts the list of MEPs. So, Prabhat, I would like you to answer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks all the MEPs for these tough questions. These are not easy, but I'll give it a shot. And so maybe first to the question on do social media bans unduly restrict children's fundamental rights? I think. So just to be perfectly honest, I think that this is a question we have ourselves and we will put into the expert process as well. I think the extremes are very easy to understand. So depends on exactly how the ban is constructed. Now, if you prohibit all platforms for anyone below 18, I think that is probably not consistent with children's rights to access some informational rights that they have, the rights to play and to learn, and so on. So, of course, nobody's proposing this. I just wanted to illustrate that if the restriction, which is a restriction, is excessive, then it will negatively affect children's rights. At the same time, no restrictions at all, in our view, and this is also the content of the guidelines, actually do more harm than good. And this is why we recommend that in a variety of different cases, we need at least age assurance. And in some cases, like pornographic platforms or gambling or alcohol sales, we need also stricter methods as well. And it's precisely, I said, it's a little bit the answer also to MEP van Sparrentak. I mean, there needs to be a proportionality in the system. And the areas of proportionality that we have put into the guidelines are, first of all, what is the actual risk of the system? And I'll answer the question on why we think that social media are not at the same level of pornographic websites in a minute. So there needs to be a proportionality at the level of what is the inherent risk in the platform itself. And secondly, there's also another proportionality which is really important. Do you always need to restrict the entire service? Or is it about parts of the service that are risky for children? So if you have, for example, you can imagine a platform that has certain parts which are very high risk, then it is in the guidelines that we only restrict those parts that really have the risk to children, and others could be left more unrestricted. So the answer is a little bit a question of proportionality, and therefore it's very hard to give a kind of a simple answer to what the effects of a ban is. Maybe also just to give the example of Australia, one of the controversial parts that we have been witnessing in whether platforms such as YouTube should be in scope or not. And it was, in the end, I think that but there was discussions about this precisely because, this is also a platform that's used by kids to do their homework if they haven't understood the maths lesson in the afternoon. We don't have like a position on this right now, but I just wanted to say that this is part of the reason. This is part of the questions that we had that we are aware of as well. So, on the second question, which was how do we ensure EU-wide uniform application of these rules? I think I'm very encouraged by the work together with national authorities that we are doing. First of all, I think there is a degree of uniform application in the DSA that is very strong, by the Commission being kind of the common enforcer for very large online platforms, setting de facto uniform rules. We don't have that in many other areas. So we have one set of rules and one single enforcer for these rules. I think that also helps tremendously. And then what we have seen and heard in our interactions with national authorities that are enforcing, there's a huge amount of willingness to apply the guidelines also for smaller platforms in a consistent and coherent manner. And this was very much the focus of our discussion yesterday. So, I mean, to the extent that, of course, also the DSA is a federated enforcement system across the European Union, like every piece of EU law, actually it has more harmonizing elements than other pieces of laws because of the Commission's role in enforcing against very large online platforms. I actually think that I'm really encouraged by the common approach that we are taking here. And we also are pursuing joint investigations and enforcement approaches against the pornographic platforms, many of which are smaller than the 45 million level threshold. On the questions that were asked about the age methods and the technology of these age methods, so I think we still intend to come forward with a technical document on the precise assessments on which technologies satisfy the different criteria that are set out in the guidelines. You know, we have these criteria on robustness, non-discrimination, and so on and so forth. Our preliminary thinking is that the EU digital wallet solution is really one of the, maybe the only solution that meets all of the criteria, including the privacy-preserving one. What I just want to say really super clearly is having platforms and social media platforms scan and upload government ID cards is not consistent with the guidelines. You know, this is not what this is something we've seen in other jurisdictions. So some platforms have proposed it, but this is not consistent with what the guidelines say. So I would say the EU digital wallet solution is a solution that meets all the criteria that are set out in the guidelines, including the privacy ones. But of course, it's also a complex architecture. It requires somebody to give credentials that are age credentials. It requires an app or another infrastructure like that can pass on these credentials to the platforms. It needs many different parties to work. So this is actually the objective of our pilot phase, to make sure that all of these different parts work together. And so I think we have making progress. We've seen 5 or 6 member states that are piloting this and integrating this into the national digital ID infrastructure. And so we'll be reporting on this pilot here also with pleasure back to this committee as soon as we have tangible results to show. On the waterbed effect, I think, yes, I mean, I think there are many waterbed effects here. You know, there's the waterbed effect of children moving to smaller platforms that are less regulated and jurisdictional escape. There is a waterbed effect about less content moderation if children are excited. But I think the rules of the DSA, they will stand. So also on other harms, you know, I think there's in terms of, for example, the rules on addictive design are not just limited to minors, by the way, in the DSA, you know. So while I see your concern, and we probably, also vigilant for doing this, including also the risk of circumvention, I think we will have to continuously monitor this and then take corrective actions once we observe it. But I think it cannot be a reason not to do this step right now, and then because something bad might happen, because then I think by that logic we wouldn't be doing very much, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much also for being honest where there is still some open questions, but it shows again, I think everyone is united in the goal of protecting minors, but sometimes it's also not so easy to find the right way. But nevertheless, thanks for presenting the guidelines. This concludes agenda item 9.